Now batting for the Reds, number 44, the shortstop, Ellie Thrill.
Here are your hosts, Ricky Logan and Roger Straz.
Welcome to the Red Hot Reds podcast. I am Roger. There's no Ricky tonight. He is not available to stream. But welcome to the Red Hot Reds podcast. It is Sunday at 8 p.m. and we are live. And oh boy, do we have a show for you tonight. The best news on the best day, first day of February. Happy February to everybody. EUGENIO Suarez is back with the Cincinnati Reds, and they got him on a pretty decent deal that we will get into later, but we want to welcome everybody into the show. Thank you for all that support us, that have subscribed, like, comment, all that good stuff to get us out there. Everybody's going crazy in Cincinnati. That I could tell. All the chatter on X, the Everything app, has been very positive. As Gino has infamously quoted, good vibes only, man. Good vibes only. It's been good vibes only today ever since the news dropped about 3 or 4 hours ago. That's where I was coming back to Cincinnati. So we're really thankful for you guys being here. We are a part of the All Gloves Off network. So like, comment, subscribe there as well. We have a bunch of other shows there. Football with Cheese is huge. The Lights Out podcast that happens on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Every Tuesday is growing as well. Really appreciate it there. All Era Sports with Sirhan. He's got his stuff going. He goes, it seems like, every single day. So shout out to those guys getting it done, getting their content in. We're also really appreciative of our sponsor that we have. It is Battle Bites. FuelYourBattle.com. Use the code AllGlovesOff10 for 10% off your order, and you can get also 10% off your order, but also it goes to a good cause because 10% of their proceeds, of their profits, go to the Wounded Warrior Project. So that's a great cause to support while you're also fueling your battle, getting your beef jerky in. And we really appreciate them as a title sponsor for this show and for all Gloves Off Media. It is a sponsor for all our shows, so really thankful for that. We had other news as well this week for the Reds, but the big one that stole the day, obviously, is EUGENIO Suarez, and we'll definitely get into that. The other news that we had as well going into this weekend is that there were some projections about the Reds' offense being not great. The TJ or Thomas Nesco or TJ Stats on Twitter, I believe, had put the Reds with their weighted WRC plus, weighted runs created plus, at near the bottom of the league. And rightfully so in many different ways, because the Reds have basically, except for today, signing Suarez, we're going to run it back with the same amount of guys, the same guys that they had last year. And expecting a bunch of guys to bounce back and have good years, or, in the case of Sal Stewart playing a full year as a Red and hopefully, providing some production for the team in 162, as opposed to just the last month of the season in September last year. For the Reds, according to TJ Stats, we're going to have a 91 weighted runs created plus, which puts them right after the Marlins and the White Sox, and just above the Nationals and the Rockies at 28th projected for their offense, which, obviously a lot of Reds fans aren't surprised, I would say, at that type of projection for them. This team has been mostly drafted and developed for pitching, hoping that there are a couple free agents. Obviously, the Jeimer Candelario signing didn't work and can kind of continue to haunt this franchise a bit with that DFA money, that money that's still in the books for this year, I believe, and next year. So that obviously is not great. And then you got a bunch of young guys in their core that some have proved their worth, Ellie, Steer, and maybe that's about it if we're being generous. CES has been a bit disappointing. Noelve Marte, I guess, has been worth his weight this last year, but he just basically crossed over 162 total baseball games in his career. So he's still basically in his infancy as a player, and probably won't be a full-fledged. Well, this year, hopefully this is the year that he goes into it and has that confidence and goes after it and gets maybe 150 plus games in right field and can put together a all-star level season. And that'd be awesome for their offense, which is something that the Reds were kind of banking on in a way, is that they have a bunch of guys that have been struggling, have been hitting below their expectations, and hopefully they all kind of put it together this season. That was the plan going into 2026. That's reflected in the 91 weighted runs created plus projected stats, and that's understandable. But now with the signing of Geno, the question becomes, where is their offense now projected? Where are they going to be kind of in that hierarchy of offenses? Do they go above? I feel it's easy to go above the Marlins, the White Sox, and the Guardians, and the Pirates right now. Now they're possibly in the territory of where the Rays, Cardinals, Angels, and Red Sox. Red Sox seem low for their offense, but yeah, maybe they jump up that much with the signing of Suarez because of the fact that not only is he a big bopper, home run hitting type of bat, but he also can provide protection for Ellie and Noelve and Spencer Steer, which is exactly what we've been kind of clamoring for ever since there was ever any rumors of Kyle Schwarber coming back home. That was kind of the deal, is that can we get any guy that is a threat to go deep at any point, or at least have the ability to go deep and have the ability to threaten the other team with extra base hits. Suarez fills that role a little bit. Will he hit for average? No. Will he strike out a lot? Yes. Is that a concern in Chris Felica's world, in Nick Krall's world? I think so. But the way that the contract is structured, which we'll get into a little bit later, really allows for the Reds to really take advantage of the fact that they got him for what they got him for at $15 million for the first year, and then they have that mutual option for 2027. And if things go south, they can always decline that option and say, thank you, Geno. We appreciate it. This was your homecoming, and basically sayonara. But yeah, we'll see how that turns out. Obviously, this year, there's high hopes now in Cincinnati on February 1st, 2026, the day that I like to call the first day of 2026 baseball, as the Serie de Caribe started with the Tomateros, the Ichiro Kano's team. The Tomateros went against the Cangrejeros de Santurce, the team that Edwin Arroyo played for in the Puerto Rican League. So that kicked off the Serie del Caribe. We'll talk about that a little bit more later as well, because that was awesome to watch. A ninth inning comeback for the Puerto Ricans, and unfortunately a devastating loss. And it's still a round robin, so they still have some chance for the Tomateros de Culiacan to come back and possibly get into the knockout stages and the semifinal and final of the Serie del Caribe. But a great start for that, to say the least. This offensive projection, though, as we know also in Cincinnati, is that projections don't necessarily match up all the time to what reality is. Baseball happens. The Reds were projected to win 78 games in 2025. They ended up getting above and beyond that, obviously with the help, I think, of a manager like Tito Francona, who just has the mentality of get out there and win every day. And that obviously seemed to be the mentality of this ball club, especially if they had gone down and lost the first two games of a 3-game series. They would just go out there on Sunday or go out there on a Thursday midday game and say, we're just going to go out and win and not get swept. So that's been kind of the mentality of this team. So for them to have kind of this 91 projection for the weighted runs created plus, yeah, I guess, projections are projections for a reason. There's something to write about before baseball actually happens. But I wouldn't be surprised, obviously, with the signing of Suarez, obviously with, more protection for Ellie and Noelve and Steer and Sal Stu, that the offense could dramatically improve. Now, is it going to be all top 10 type offense? I doubt it. It's not going to be that situation. We still have a ball club kind of set up to have the pitchers do their thing, and then hopefully we can get enough offense on our side, where I think the stat was that we averaged 4.7 runs per game last year. It should be well over 5.5, hopefully, and that should give us a chance to win more ball games in 2026. Shout out to William Wright in the chat. Thank you for your chat here. I'm certainly glad to hear Eugenio Suarez is back in the Reds again. Yes, they got the hitter, the power, the thing that we've been craving for so long, and they strengthened their lineup for sure. No doubt about it. That is the story of the day, William, and very much so something we've been really, really kind of asking for. I don't even know. We Ricky and I usually go through all these stats and whatnot in terms of like the last guy to hit X amount of home runs, because it seems like we've had a power outage since the 2021 season, basically since Eugenio Suarez left. I think he hit 47, 48, 49, somewhere in that range. Was getting close, I guess, to George Foster's record for most home runs in a season as a Cincinnati Red. That hopefully can be the situation coming in 2026, that we have a guy potentially going for George Foster's record again. I also saw on X that Eugenio had 49 home runs in 2025 between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Seattle Mariners that he got traded to later in the season. And adjusted for Great American Ballpark, it would have been 54 home runs. So that he still got it. And now, is it fair and to put the expectation on Suarez to hit 54 home runs? I don't think so. That may be asking a bit much. I think as a guy that is coming home, hopefully he'll have that comfortability and that trust factor to be in the lineup every day as I'm pretty sure the opening day DH, especially with the comments that Tito doesn't really want to pigeonhole Sal Stewart as a DH at age 22 or whatever he is, 21. I can't remember. But he definitely, Suarez could definitely take on that role. He's kind of had that role for at least the last couple of years as being the designated hitter, the guy that just goes up there and mashes. Not necessarily great. He's basically a liability defensively. So I wouldn't. There had been kind of a little bit of comments about who's going to get traded off the 40-man roster to add Suarez, and that's a good question. There are many things out there. A lot of people possibly saying that maybe Singer's gone, and that would open up third base for Sal Stu and or a platoon with Suarez if need be. I'm not sure. Singer could be coming off the books. His $12 million is definitely, or what do you got in the arbitration? I think he was projected to get 12, ended up getting about 14 or so. So that could be the guy that ends up being dealt 4 prospects for, I don't know exactly what they can get for him, being a reliable arm that he is. And obviously he's got traded before because he was traded from Kansas City to us for Mr. Jonathan India. So it'd be interesting to see what the roster change will be, what players coming off the 40-man roster allow space for Geno Suarez. So that's a good question we're going to have kind of coming up after all the dust settles in terms of the happiness around Cincinnati and hopefully the snow melting as well this week. I hope wherever you are, the snow isn't too terrible and that we will be able to maybe see our lawns again this week, as it's supposed to get up to 32 plus. So we'll definitely be looking out for that and hopefully we'll be able to melt away that snow so that we can get into that spring mentality where we're looking forward to spring baseball coming in March, whether that be or in February with the spring training coming up later this month, and then also World Baseball Classic at the beginning of March, and then also opening day at the end of March there, March 26th. So it's going to be an exciting one for sure, this opening day, especially with the reunion of Eugenio Suarez coming back to the ball club. The crowd will go crazy when they hear his name again. I know Joe Z will be pretty excited. I think Joe Zerhausen, the public address announcer for the Cincinnati Reds, your Cincinnati Reds, he is, I think, on record saying in some interviews that his favorite player to announce coming up to bat was Eugenio Suarez. So he'll get the chance to do that again. And he's got Ellie as well to announce as well, which I think is another one that's up there for him. So Joe Z definitely, I think, is, if anything, is the most excited person in Cincinnati to hear that Geno is coming back. And then, William, again, I think that, Suarez, was close to catching George Foster's home run record with the Reds. And then Greg Vaughn, 99, had a great season. I remember hearing a story about Greg Vaughn that it was his only season, I think, is 99 with the Reds, because they had a situation where he was going to get traded, and they ended up, it was a messy situation. I'm sure someone else will have it, but I believe that his time was too short, Greg Vaughn in Cincinnati, and ended up being a situation where he had those 45 home runs, one season wonder, and unfortunately couldn't replicate that the next year. So shout out Greg Vaughn out there. Shout out to Gino and George Foster, man. Reds legends for sure. That is definitely for sure. Speaking of Reds legends, Joseph Daniel Votto has got a new job. I don't know if you heard the news. This was going to be the big news for our show tonight, and it definitely would have been if the Suarez deal hadn't happened. But Joseph Votto is going to be coming back to your television screens. NBC Sports has contracted Major League Baseball's Sunday night baseball coverage, essentially what ESPN had for years and years and years. And it's reported that not only Joey Votto is working out a contract to work for their baseball coverage, but also Clayton Kershaw and Anthony Rizzo, former Cub, is going to be on their coverage. Now, they don't specify, I believe, what exactly they'll be doing on their coverage team, but it ends up being a situation where it feels like they're kind of assembling a crew of analysts to cover the games, not necessarily the play-by-play or the color commentator. I don't think Votto, and Votto has done that. I think when he was rehabbing for one of his seasons in 2019 or 2021 and 22, had went into the booth and worked with Sadak or whomever, and was kind of crafting his potential post-playing career, which is what it ended up being. But he was more of the color commentator for the Bally Sports back then, I believe, crew. This time around, my prediction is that he's going to be on the studio crew, kind of like the crew with Charles Barkley and Shaq and Kenny Smith. I think those three guys, Kershaw, Rizzo, and Votto, might be those guys that break down the game, maybe have some real, big insights on what's going on and whatnot at certain points of pregame, postgame, what have you. And maybe they get up to some chicanery, some fun, being that, there are a couple guys that played against each other for a long time, and Rizzo and Votto for one, and then Kershaw obviously pitching to both of those guys at various points of their career. So that'd be kind of cool that it would be kind of a studio crew is my guess. I'm not exactly sure of what their capacity at NBC Sports is going to be, but it'd be nice to see them cover the games and hear Votto. Obviously, he's kind of come out of his shell. There was a podcast, a report, or a show that Reds Daily, Greg Kuffner, covered the Votto news and talked about how basically he came out of his shell, and basically since the time of a rookie to the time he ended up, having his final season with the Reds in 2023, he had kind of come a long way in terms of embracing the fandom, in terms of embracing his silly side, embracing his personality, and kind of putting more and more of himself out there. There's obviously the silly clips of him in the Mountie uniform on MLB Network, dressed up, taking interviews with that. Joey Votto, famous Canadian baseball player, dressing up as basically their not their police, but it's like their rural policemen that ride on horses and whatnot. So, and there's been also other clips where he went at what's his name at high heat on MLB Network, Chris Russo, and having a rant because I think Chris Russo made some sort of maligning comment, some sort of negative comment about small market superstars or small market players, and him and Greinke and Votto were kind of lumped into these players that kind of wasted away their careers in small markets. And I think Votto kind of pushed back on him in a really silly way. Check out that clip. And I even invoked the name of Roger Peckinpah, that that Mr. Chris Russo was going to be no next Mr. Roger Peckinpah, which was an AL MVP winner in the 1930s, I believe. So it also shows that I think Votto showed his personality, that he was kind of a baseball historian, which would be awesome to see if he kind of goes to that on the NBC sports panel or whatever the broadcast situation for him is, if he's able to tap into that in a comedic or, an insightful way, I think Joey Votto has shown a lot of people that he has like a great deep understanding about baseball and baseball history and a reverence for it. That will be awesome to see on display if he's able to do that in a way for NBC Sports. You know what I mean? It definitely, hopefully, is not a situation with the Michael Jordan moments of excellence type thing, where it's just very, very brief. Hopefully we get a lot of Joey at this NBC Sports package, which I think I'm going to be tuning into Sunday Night Baseball. I know since the Reds have really not been on Sunday Night Baseball since the 2010s when they had the Dusty Baker teams, and basically I think the last time that they were on Sunday Night Baseball, they had what's his name. Estevez's brother, Charlie Sheen, basically showed up, and he ended up being on the panel for that. And I think it was this 2014, 2015 time. So it was definitely a long time since we've ever seen the Reds on Sunday Night Baseball. And they're technically on Sunday Night Baseball this year. They have a 3 p.m. game against the Cubs. It's Sunday day baseball at the best, but at least hopefully Votto will be able to cover that along with Rizzo possibly in the NBC Sports package. William Wright writes it is Sunday night NBC Sports be doing the MLB involving Joey Votto and others on there. If that is certainly be watching more than I did. Yeah, same here, man. Same here. It's definitely taking over the ESPN package on Sunday night, and I think they also are doing a kind of special Star Spangled Sunday. So like 4th of July this year, 250th anniversary of our country, but then also like a bunch of things are happening on that day. The next day, Sunday, July 5th, I believe NBC is broadcasting every single game on Peacock and or NBC, and the Reds are going to be on one of those games, probably Peacock game on July 5th, Sunday, July 5th. And it's going to be just wall-to-wall coverage, maybe even like a Red Zone style coverage of Major League Baseball. I'm not sure if they've leaked that information or whatnot. So, basically, the Reds were not on. I think 2014 was the last time I remember the Reds being on ESPN Sunday night coverage, and that might even been when John Miller and Joe Morgan were still doing the broadcasts. I can't exactly remember when Joe Morgan passed, but I believe that that was the last time the Reds were on ESPN. And since then, it's just been Yankees, Red Sox, Dodgers, and everybody kind of knows that situation that ESPN is just they're just broadcasting the big market teams, and maybe the Mets are in there as well sometimes or whatever. But I think NBC, hopefully with their new media package for MLB, hopefully that reinvigorates a lot of fans back to watching TV on, like, say, a Sunday night on like a primetime game, even if it's not your team, even if it's not your market that's involved. So that'd be kind of awesome if the newness of it, like how they have come back to NBC on NBA on NBC, like that kind of old nostalgia coming back. I don't believe NBC ever covered baseball like Sunday night baseball before, but it'll be hopefully a nice new venture, a nice new thing that we'll be able to experience together. Because I mean, I don't know, baseball since 2023, I feel like has been steadily kind of getting a little bit more and more popular. We obviously have a looming CBA talk and potential lockout at the end of this year because, the players union and owners are generally not always on the same page, but hopefully they can work out their differences for the best of the fans and the ability to enjoy this game, and not have to experience a shortened season, not have to experience a work stoppage, not have to, what I mean? That kind of thing really halts the momentum of baseball as I think even Ricky and I talked about with regards to the 94 lockout and how that potentially sent the Expos down a path of basically not necessarily having a future in Major League Baseball. And we all know kind of how that story ends if you're familiar with that at all. But if you haven't, check out that Netflix doc. I know no free ads, but Netflix did a really good job with Who Killed the Expos, kind of presenting the facts of the situation, not necessarily trying to tell you who did it, but showing you and being able to have kind of a situation where you get to kind of figure out, based on the testimonies, based on the facts of how things occurred, basically you can come to your own conclusions, which is kind of what kind of documentaries kind of should be about. You're documenting history and documenting events, and you're not trying to tell a certain one side of the story, which I think we've lamented about certain sports documentaries of recent, where maybe it's only from one perspective or maybe just a certain amount of perspectives, and that can really kind of skew it one way or the other. So go check that out if you are a Expos fan or baseball fan, or just kind of interested in to figure out what happened there, because baseball used to be a huge sport in Montreal. They started their team way back in 1967 or 63 or something like that. So it's not like it's a little small fling of a thing that baseball left that city, that part of Canada. And unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever go back. Maybe one day, but here's the thing. The crazy thing about when teams leave a city obviously affects the fan base, affects the economy to some extent. But the amount that it would have cost to keep that team in that city, for example, the Seattle Supersonics are an example of this as well in Seattle. The amount that it would take to keep the Supersonics in Seattle way back when, 2008 or whatever it was that happened, as opposed to now if Seattle wants to be an expansion franchise in the NBA, is astronomically different. Like, it's way, way higher nowadays. So yesterday's price ain't today's price in terms of getting a new franchise or reviving your old franchise. So I don't know if Montreal has the money or the backing to do that. I think Los Angeles, obviously, or not Los Angeles, Las Vegas and Nashville and what's some of the other cities there, they might have more possibility of starting a new franchise or having the money to start a new franchise than, say, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So there is a possibility of Reds making some more money. The fact that the Reds signed EUGENIO Suarez might be an indication that the Reds may be getting a new streaming platform lined up, a business deal, to basically get some extra revenue to pay for EUGENIO Suarez. That's at least my kind of tea leaves reading of it, because the whole debacle, the whole situation with Schwarber that happened earlier in this offseason, it was that, he can sell himself, he can get tickets sold and whatnot. Also, they were working on the thought that they would still have a streaming contract, a TV contract for the Reds that would basically pay them money. But that deal with mainstream sports and FanDuel has basically fallen apart, and the Reds haven't officially killed the deal, but because mainstream sports / FanDuel has been very, very terrible about paying their debts, about paying their teams on time, it lends to think, and also the fact that mainstream sports also has now filed for bankruptcy again, it lends to believe that this deal with FanDuel / mainstream sports is probably dead in the water, and that they're going to probably have to go to MLB to basically take over their production, which will be good and bad in terms of, I believe that the production there, it will just be as quality, hopefully not worse than FanDuel, because I know a lot of people had some quibbles about the FanDuel streaming app and platform and whatnot at times. But also, it should be able to keep most of the same people employed that were working with FanDuel / mainstream sports, because a lot of those employees are working for the Reds / also getting paid on the side from the streaming site. So the new streaming platform, as detailed in Ricky's, Reds on SI, go check him out, is called Victory Plus. And this is a new streaming site. I don't know terribly much about it. Never really used it. But there had been reports that the shutdown of mainstream sports for their bankruptcy and whatnot has basically kind of had the Reds look out for some different deals that could be potentially out there. And there was a report out there that Victory Plus could be a solution. The Reds are one of the teams looking into this. Not only them, but I believe maybe even the Arizona. Okay. Victory Plus has been pitched as a sales pitch, a short-term solution for them, and it's got some modest fee rights, I guess, and minimum guarantees of revenue sharing. The Dallas Stars and Anaheim Ducks use it currently, and the Texas Rangers. I was thinking the Texas Rangers use Victory, or are going to be using Victory Plus going into 2026. So it may be modest revenue, but it may be possibly enough for the Reds to afford Mr. EUGENIO Suarez, the $15 million. So we'll have to wait and see. I believe last year at this time it was in the same situation for the Reds, where they were prepared for MLB to take over their production of the television coverage, and then at the last moment, mainstream sports and FanDuel picked up the Reds, and they ended up getting some extra revenue from that TV contract going into 2025. But as we've noted, and a lot of people have noted, they're very unreliable with their payments to the teams, as Williams pointing out here as well, that like Padres, D-backs, Rockies are already taken over by MLB. I believe, like the D-backs had FanDuel and they missed payments and everything. So it's just a mess. Baseball's television contract, especially the regional sports networks, have really taken this sport down in terms of just being able to provide a steady form of revenue for smaller market teams, for regular market teams as well. I mean, the only real, markets that succeed on their television contracts, unfortunately, again, are the big markets, where you got Spectrum Sports out there in Los Angeles, the Yes Network in New York. The Cubs as well have their own network in Marquee Sports as well, which they reap the benefit of that, having subscriber-based stuff. I don't know if the Reds would really go that route or whatnot to try to create their own production in-house thing, but I think at worst they'll be probably a candidate after this season, if they don't do Victory Plus or this season, to have MLB take over their rights, because I believe in 2028 or 2029 all the rights deals across MLB teams are going to be up, which I believe MLB is positioning themselves to take over all the sport, all the teams' television rights and streaming deals, bundle them all together, and potentially either sell them off for parts so that they can get some better revenue sharing. Because it was also revealed, I think, recently this week, or been kind of a known secret out there, that the Los Angeles Dodgers had a television deal that basically saves them money, because when I think Mark Walter, or the former owner, who I believe was getting divorced and had to sell the team, filed for bankruptcy, and basically it lowered their percentage and tax for revenue sharing on their streaming site, or on their streaming revenue. Basically, what ends up happening is that they end up having a situation where their fair market value, due to the bankruptcy of the divorced former owner of the Dodgers, who sold the team to Mark Walter, he basically had a fair market value that only pays about $10 million of a $70 million television deal. So basically, he's saving $60 million going forward for the Dodgers that they get to keep, that gets not taxed and sent into the pile of revenue sharing for all the other smaller market teams in Major League Baseball. So that is a huge, huge advantage for the Dodgers, aside from their owner being a billionaire, aside from their owner being willing to trade and sign players for above market value. It definitely is something that Major League Baseball need to look into and kind of fix, because if all 70 million of Spectrum's revenue going toward the Dodgers is taxed appropriately, then there's a lot more revenue sharing from the Dodgers to the other smaller markets in Major League Baseball. It's a bit unfair to allow a big market team that already has a lot of ability to spend to save a lot of their money on a TV deal that, I mean, it's essentially it's unfair if you really think about it, especially from a perspective of a Cincinnati Reds fan, and probably if you ask any other type of, GM or president of baseball operations, what they think about the Dodgers television contract deal and deal emphasis, they probably would say the same thing, that it's a bit unfair and allows for a huge advantage for the Dodgers to save all that money that isn't revenue shared. So neither here nor there. The Reds are potentially in talks with Victory Plus. Not necessarily sure how their service works. Like I said, the Rangers had that. They have now actually posted the Victory Plus amount of subscriber fees. It does say that it ends the blackout for local viewers, so that's a positive thing, I think, for Reds fans, because there's a lot of Reds fans in all parts of Reds country. I think even our friend Tommy Bennett, who lives in North Carolina, gets blacked out from MLB because he's technically in the Reds, Reds map of television. But they have put out here that the service would be $100. I'm not that for the whole season, the 2025 season, and projected to be about $140 for the 2026 season. That sounds like a decent amount of money. $19.99 a month, I believe, is usually the projection for MLB TV streaming, but that does include blackouts, I believe. So if you really extrapolate that out, 6 months of baseball, that's about $120. So it's about in that range. So it's fair for, I think, consumers of the Reds baseball. If they're not getting blacked out and they can pay only about $140, I think a lot of fans would be maybe not completely happy because they have to go to a different site and subscribe to another one and get a password and all that junk. As we all have a million passwords that we have to remember for every single account that we have. That may be the most annoying part of it. But if it's moderately priced like that, like the Rangers, then I think we can possibly have a decent deal. And if it provides revenue for this baseball team, let's have it. Because it's definitely a situation that the Reds they've not even hinted at. They've directly said that having basically not a television deal in place or a lucrative television deal in place, it makes it harder for them to buy and sign agents or free agents and basically have more money to deal with to sign players. So it's kind of interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Like I said, check out Ricky's work on Reds on SI. He's out there writing about all this kind of stuff. I'm sure he's busy right now writing about the Suarez stuff because right now we're getting to the meat of our show. Really appreciate you guys all out there watching. But like EUGENIO Suarez has, I think, gotten a bunch of people back on track for the Cincinnati Reds. Locked On, Chatterbox, everybody's posting about this stuff. Everybody's getting their podcasts in and whatnot. I wanted to get on and obviously talk about this. Unfortunately, we'll have to talk to Ricky on a later show, get his thoughts on this because it's definitely something that the Reds have been clamoring for. It's definitely something that the Reds had thought would be Reds fans thought would be a pipe dream to bring back Suarez because at the time when the offseason free agency started, I think he was projected to go with a 3-year deal for about $75 million. Annual average value of $25 million a year. And obviously the Reds, with their tight budget and their many reasons for not being able to afford different players, it seemed like a tall task to pay that much money. But I think what ended up happening a lot with this is that you go around and you see that a bunch of the other names like Bellinger, like Schwarber, like all the other free agents that ended up signing this offseason, once they start coming off the board, I feel like the asking price for Suarez ends up coming more and more down. He is entering his, I believe, age 34 season. So he's not a young buck anymore, and that's nothing against that. I mean, obviously, last year he just hit 49 home runs and 118 RBIs. So the guy can clearly still play. He'll definitely be a threat on the base when he's up to the plate. And if he's got runners on ahead of him, like TJ Friedel, like Marte, like Ellie, that just makes it that much more dangerous because those guys will be able to, they'll be able to provide some offense for this team more than kind of what we've been expecting of the last couple seasons with the Reds, which have been really, 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 tough to watch at times. But neither here nor there. Suarez signs for 1 year, $15 million, but a mutual option in 2027, which I think this is possibly the best deal possible for the Reds in terms of just being able to have the option if he does well. Hey, easy pickup on that option. Suarez, we will gladly welcome you back in 2027 if he performs the way he did in 2025, for sure. If 2026 goes south, it's not great. Okay, he's about the same amount of money that we're paying for Jeimer Candelario's, and at least Jeimer Candelario's situation, he was just god awful, and he wasn't even providing any power. So it really, speaking of Candelario, I kind of wish that was kind of the deal for his 3-year deal, $45 million, that ended up being annual average value of $15 million a year. If we could have go back in time and reset that situation in terms of signing Candelario to a deal that maybe had some club options / mutual options in there, I think it saved the Reds fans a lot of headache and would possibly have them feel a little bit less upset about the Candelario situation not working out. And I think hopefully, I'm not hoping for that, but hopefully we get into a situation where 2026 Suarez does his thing and this team is building toward the future, building toward where we're getting toward the prime of Ellie, McLean, and Steer, and just getting closer and closer to the prime of Suarez, of Stewart, and getting in some guys, maybe Arroyo makes his debut this year, maybe Hector Rodriguez makes his debut this year, maybe Leo Balcazar. There's lots of possibilities where this team can be building and building, not just maybe just to win a playoff series at 2 in 2026, but maybe being legitimate World Series contenders in 2027, 2028, the more or less prime of Elly De La Cruz, and coming to the last couple of years of his arbitration, which will be a whole podcast onto itself in terms of trying to figure out what the Reds are going to do there. But more than anything, the news has been super positive for Suarez. I did converse with some of our fans of the show that it feels like the Reds overpaid potentially for a Eugenio Suarez, who was, projected possibly, I think Fred said back and forth when we were talking, he was projecting him at 10 to 12 million a year for that first year, or possibly that mutual option year. 15 million, if we're overpaying, that's, I think, at least worth the gamble. If that 15 million ends up being a situation where he hits 220 with 30 home runs and 100 RBIs, I think that's well worth the money. And he plays 150, 145 games, well worth the money. Now, the question also becomes, I guess, with this deal that we have to think about is, Suarez is going to be probably the full-time DH. There isn't a situation where I think he can be playing out there at third base with Elly De La Cruz as well on that left side of the infield, with Elly's struggles at times fielding the ball. Ke'Bryan Hayes is kind of the insurance policy there for defense, and his offense obviously is something that will be heavily criticized if he does not come out the gate, and he could be a trade candidate. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the show that which guy is going to be moved off the 40-man to make room for Eugenio Suarez. Well, it could be a Ke'Bryan Hayes trade. It could be a Brady Singer trade. It could be a guy just getting DFA'd off the 40-man or option down, like one of the younger players that we have, Leo Balcazar or something like that. Could be the situation. I don't know exactly where the Reds go here. This is what the front office, player personnel, president of baseball operations really get paid the big money, is where they, formulate this team. They construct this team to be a winning ball club again in 2026. Because we certainly, for sure, do not want the great 2023 vibes where the Reds exceeded their expectations, much like they did in 2025. But then also after 2023, the 2024 season was just a mess. Just a mess of expectations in terms of that it was not good baseball, to say the least. But it also was, it was chaotic and ended up being 2 steps back when the Reds had made all those strides in 2023 with that young core coming up, the class of 2023, as I like to call it. It's very frustrating and to have, obviously, the creeping baseball doubt that regression can always be on the table for a team that overexceeds, right? Basically, water finds its level. Well, with an addition of Eugenio Suarez to a already playoff team that is exceeding expectation but has room to grow, room to mature, room to get better, this, I think, hopefully quiets the regression talk. Hopefully quiets the fact that the Reds are projected still to win, I think, 83 games, 83 and a half. I think a lot of people are going to be taking the over, mostly because there are a few games that come to mind where the Reds just didn't have enough to win. And that's why you have to go out there in the free agent market sometimes because what's in-house doesn't necessarily get the job done. You have to go elsewhere and find some guys that are proven bats that will go out there and put up a production that you're able to win, and just not necessarily every single day, but those games where the offense is fading, the offense is not doing great, and you just need that one hit to spark them, that one home run, that one extra base hit, something like that. We were really lacking that in 2025 at times. The pitching staff pitched well over their head in terms of just keeping them in ball games all the time. The starters and then also the relief pitchers, just keeping them in ball games. We got to just make sure we have enough offense because, baseball, it can be a funny game. A ball could kick left or right, and you can end up being a team that wins, 77 games like they did in 2024 after they had won 82 games and were taking the MLB by storm by winning 12 games in a row in June of 2023. We obviously have a situation where the Reds are, I feel, primed and ready to go. Working with Tito, all the conversations we have with the ball players we've interviewed, love Terry Francona and feel like he has the right mentality to keep this team headed in the right direction, steering the ship, so to speak. And he definitely has the expertise and, the resume of being a World Series winning manager that you would want at the helm, at the managerial position. So I'm not too afraid, even if they hadn't added Suarez, I'm not too afraid that they would regress as much, just because there's a lot of young guys here, and a lot of young guys are inconsistent. But if you have an older manager that knows when and where to employ players, when and where to pick his spots of putting them in the lineup and what position and where to trust them and whatnot, I think we can, rest easy as Reds fans that not only are we getting the players in like Suarez, and we're getting a healthy Ellie De La Cruz, hopefully for 162 games, that we're going to be just fine. And our pitching staff, I mean, obviously we talked about this with Red Fest. Hunter Green seems to he's really embracing his role as, I feel like, captain of the ball club. If there is a role still for that, I believe he is definitely taking over that leadership role. Maybe not always a vocal leader, but he's definitely leading by example, no doubt. And you're just happy to see that because he's obviously a guy that the Reds are going to really, really need to play well in 2026. And we hope for the best for Hunter and everybody. But yeah, Williams writing in. He noticed that they've been pretty decent in the odd years. Yeah. And then this decade they've had bad years in the even seasons. Let's hope to break that trend for sure, William. That is not necessarily the way that we want to go into 2026, especially because you know what? Before Tito showed up in Boston, they had a really, really rough time. I think 88 straight years of not winning a World Series. And in 2004, they broke through with the Boston Red Sox and won their first World Series. I believe that's still the same season. They were down 0-3 to the Yankees and won in Game 7 in dramatic fashion. And yeah, he is definitely here to buck some trends, to exercise some demons. I know it's only been since 1990, but that feels like centuries ago for some Reds fans. And there's generations of Reds fans that haven't even seen the Reds win a World Series in their time. Ricky being one of them, I think he's born 92 or 93. So there are many generations of Reds fans that are looking to see a World Series for the first time in their lifetime. I know I was only 3 or 4 years old, but technically I was still alive during that time. There were some stats that I wanted to pull out about Eugenio Suarez because obviously his acquisition has been fantastic and has been kind of something that the Reds have been missing since since he's been gone, like basically since 2021. The Reds had him for 7 seasons. I believe he signed in 2015. He was on the Detroit Tigers organization and ended up being a Red ever since. And since 2015 to 2001, in that time, Gino had hit 253 with 189 home runs, 524 RBIs. And his 2019 season, the season where I believe that we were talking about, he nearly broke George Foster's home run record, single season home run record, 49 home runs and 103 RBIs. And I really remember that season because my wife is a huge Eugenio Suarez fan. And I believe it was actually the 2018 season we went and saw him play. I believe he had the platinum hair at that time. And he hit a foul ball right to where we were sitting. So my wife ended up getting a foul ball off of Suarez's bat. And he would go on to have decent 2020, I believe, this is when I had. So 18, I believe, is when he had his arbitration hearing, and they ended up rejecting his offer. The arbitrator rejected his offer. I forget the numbers at the time. But what ended up happening is that the Reds organization won the arbitration hearing versus Suarez in 2018. But then they ended up extending him, I believe, the 7-year. Is it the 7-year? Or no, it was a different extension. Maybe it was a different one. But they ended up extending him after that. And then they ended up having a situation where after he got signed, he had a couple productive years. And then he got, I think, another extension in 2019 after this crazy season, 49 and 103 RBIs. And then they had the 7-year, $66 million extension. And then just he kind of struggled after that in 2020, obviously a pandemic shortened season, in 2021. And then in the beginning of, in the middle of spring training, I believe, shout out to Charlie Goldsmith writing this story. In mid-March of spring training 2022, the Reds shipped off Mr. Eugenio Suarez and Jesse Winker to Seattle. I believe that's the Jake Fraley trade and Connor Phillips and Brandon Williamson, I want to say. And they end up basically just having right in the middle of spring training. Everyone's kind of gearing up for the season. The feelings are good because everyone's excited and getting back together and whatnot. And then having a trade in the middle of that, it's got to be a real hit to the gut as a baseball fan, for one, and also as a baseball club, because you're missing two pretty big players that are going to possibly be a big part of the 2022 season. But there it is. They end up doing the trade. The Reds were a bit of a rebuilding mode, unfortunately, because they kind of went a little bit all in 2020, I guess you can say, in that shortened season, made the playoffs, didn't score a run, but neither here nor there. They tried, you can say. But then in 2022, they blew it up a bit. And the funny thing is that when Gino Suarez was headed out the door saying bye to all his teammates, he said, "Good vibes only. Good vibes only." And that has been kind of echoing around everywhere. Everyone's kind of been saying good vibes only. I know Jeff Carr, a Lockdown Red, shout out to him. He had been putting out there good vibes only. So the good vibes are back in Cincinnati, and we're glad to have Suarez back, even though it's been a while. It's been 4 long seasons without him since that 2022 trade. But he's back. I believe there's also a report out there that his daughters were kind of asking around, or asking him and maybe his wife, when's the next time we're going to Cincinnati? When we're going back to Cincinnati? And I guess maybe that could have led Suarez to make ultimately his decision, because I guess he was choosing between the Pirates and us. So I want to say he would never really go back to the Pirates. I don't know exactly how much money it would take for him to play for the Pittsburgh Pirates, but I would hope he would think it through a little bit harder there and be able to say that, like, Cincinnati, with their young core, he could be that veteran voice, that veteran bat that can hopefully get us 3, 4, 5, 6 wins that we desperately need to compete for the division and maybe get to that 90-win territory that I think is necessary. We talk about this with Ricky a lot in terms of, like, the Reds are in a tough division. The Cubs have rebuilt. They've gotten a bunch of guys. They got Bregman. They got rid of Kyle Tucker, which, in my opinion, he's pretty overrated. Obviously, he's going to be pretty good in the Dodgers, but that's because he's got all this help around him. He barely played enough games to qualify for a lot of stats last season. I think like 90-something games. So he's often injured, not necessarily a superstar, but the Reds have to compete with the Cubs and the Brewers, who have routinely been able to cycle guys in and out like a Freddie Peralta. You know what I mean? They ended up getting rid of him in a trade, but they have the best minor league system organization voted year in, year out. So there's probably no doubt that they'll be able to replenish that with draft and develop guys of their own, much like how the Reds do with their pitching staff. It would be interesting to see, though, what ends up being the win totals of those teams. If the Reds finish third in their division, they have to probably win 90 games. They won 83 games finishing third in their division, and that barely got them in the playoffs. That's not good enough. 85, I don't think will be good enough either. There's too many good teams out west. The Giants will probably be better. The Dodgers obviously be good. The Phillies will be good in the East, and so will the Mets. So 90 games have to be the goal. And that makes you a legitimate team as well. When you get to that number, I think that really kind of solidifies you as a team to be reckoned with in baseball, because you're winning more times than not. You're about almost 30 games over. That's a legitimate baseball team, as opposed to 83 and 79. That's not going to work. You got to get that 90 or 20 games over. You got to get that 90 and 70 record around there, and be able to basically put together a whole season that you're consistently not having any of those drop-offs like they did in August. You know what I mean? And that's kind of a thing that Tito's been really good with, and kind of eliminating the peaks and valleys, as Ricky would say, as Carl would say. So I don't have really too much. I don't think that the Pirates are that much of a threat, as much as they're got a great minor league system with great players coming up. That shortstop, and then Bubba Chandler and a bunch of other guys that can pitch. And obviously the Cardinals, that, as William Wright is talking about, they got rid of Arenado to the D-backs, and they might be last. They hopefully will win 60 games. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what happened to the Cardinal way, and I'm glad in a way that it's not going to make this team somehow a strange competitor, because the Cardinals, man, a lot of people have a lot of distaste and disdain for the Cubs fans, because they always descend on Great American Ballpark. But I would put the Brewers and the Cardinals at the top of my dislike list in the division, and just apathy toward the Pirates, because as Mr. Marty Brennan always says, is that the Pirates always try to go out there and try their best, but until they realize and look down that they're wearing their loser uniforms, then they'll go back to being the Pirates of how they usually are. So I think really the Cardinals, if they win 60 games, 70 games, I think that's a good season for them if they win 70 games, because they look like they have a bunch of prospects that didn't really work out, like a Jordan Walker and whatnot. They don't really have a pitching staff anymore. And Arenado was supposed to be traded probably 3 or 4 seasons prior to this, before he's really kind of, been not the same Arenado that was at the beginning of his Cardinals tenure. And obviously Rockies Arenado was a Gold Glover every year. So, shout out to the Cardinals for stinking this year. Thanks for that, William. But yeah, Suarez is back. Suarez is on a deal that I think the Reds are super comfortable with in terms of balancing the budget. I don't know exactly. I hope Nick Kroll doesn't get on a hot stove and talk about how he's got to balance the budget again because of Suarez, or Suarez has to pay for himself with ticket prices. I mean, based on the social media reaction of Suarez's signing, I think he probably will get a bunch of phone calls at the season ticket holder office, and a bunch of people are going to be getting their season tickets in, and or just getting a bunch more tickets than they would in April and May than they generally do. I know obviously it's going to be crazy on opening day at the end of March, and hopefully they'll continue that party into April, May, and June. That would be completely exactly how the front office hopefully is going to write this script, is to have a hot Reds team going into the month of June, because that's obviously their favorite month to get hot. So if they're already, working on all cylinders at that point, that's going to be even better for the Reds, because actually they have one of the craziest August schedules, I believe, or not August, September, but one of the craziest September schedules of all time, where they play the Braves and they play the Cubs and the Brewers and the Dodgers, I think twice in the span of a week. And then they also finished off the season with a World Series runner-up, Toronto Blue Jays. So the Reds better clinch, or really close to clinching a playoff spot by the time that Labor Day rolls around, because they're going to have to earn it in September of 2025. It is a gauntlet, and it's crazy because the worst team out of the bunch that I mentioned was the Atlanta Braves, and they're getting back their superstars in Acuna and Spencer Strider. So watch out. That's going to be a heck of a month to come down the stretch, and hopefully the Reds will be positioned well in whatever position, third, second, or first in division, whatever it ends up being. We'll have to earn it in 2026 for sure. But yeah, Suarez is back. Shout out to that. We're going to probably talk about that in shows to come because there's going to probably be more reporting on what ended up happening and how he ended up signing with the Reds. But we are obviously excited here. At Red Hot Reds, we're going to get back our old favorite, Eugenio Suarez. And we're going to be excited to cover this team going into February and March because I don't know if you know this, guys. In 20 days, the Reds play a spring training game in their first action of 2026. So it'll be awesome to see Suarez out there in the old number 7, although I think Spencer Steer's got 7. That'll be, I guess, the next bit of news that we'll find out is what number Suarez is going to wear because maybe Spencer Steer gives up his number 7 for Suarez. Maybe he doesn't. We'll see. That'll be interesting to do. I know a lot of guys in other teams, they'll buy a guy a car or they'll pay him a bunch of money or maybe he'll take him out to dinner to a really fancy restaurant to get his number back or something like that. I know that Suarez makes a little bit more money than Spencer Steer, so maybe he'll treat him a little bit to get that number back. But yeah, moving on to the next topic, we had some small, quick topics that a bit tired topics, to be honest with you. There was a rage bait, click bait post on one of these X accounts. I don't think I'd like to name, but they listed out their 10 most overrated baseball players, I think of all time, I believe, because they had some old timers on there. And unfortunately, the Reds landed 2 guys in that list. Ellie De La Cruz, unfortunately, caught a stray with being one of the more overrated baseball players in this top 10 list. And also Pete Rose. So I'm not sure exactly the logic on that in terms of what they mean by overrated because he obviously, he's obviously one of the best baseball players that have ever played in terms of hitting. But in terms of, I guess, winning, maybe he played 20 plus seasons and I think he only won the one time. And I don't even think he won with the 75 team. Anyway, the list also has a bunch of names that a lot of people would probably and then the guy also booted on the list by writing at number 10 right in a player. I think if you're really being serious about putting a list together, I don't know if you should put in a fill in the blank. But that's just me there. Number 1, he's got Mark McGwire. Number 2, Don Sutton. Number 3, Jack Morris. Number 4, David Ortiz. Number 5, Derek Jeter. Number 6, Pete Rose. Number 7, Nolan Ryan, which is ridiculous. 8, Ellie De La Cruz, which is also ridiculous. And then also 9, Fernando Tatis Jr. The thing about Ellie and Fernando is that their careers aren't done, so we can't really properly evaluate them. If both of them obviously stop playing baseball today, maybe there's like this, they never reached their potential type of thing, overratedness, but that's not necessarily going to be the case because both of these guys have long, like at least 8, 9, 10 more years of baseball left in them, I would say. So it's kind of really rough to kind of overrate these guys. And my contention is you're overrated only as much as that you're paid. If you're in a situation where you're Ellie De La Cruz and you're making $800,000 a year and you're putting up the best WAR numbers, the best weighted runs created plus for your whole franchise, that can't be overrated. And if anything, this is a guy that's overperforming what he's being paid and will be compensated on the back end when he gets his big extension from whomever. Probably not Cincinnati, unfortunately, but he will be possibly overrated at that point if he's making $70 million a year, a la, Ohtani, or if he's got a 15-year deal of 800 plus, like, a Soto. And then if he's not matching those numbers, if he's not one of the best players in baseball, if he's not necessarily living up to the expectations defensively, then you could call him overrated. But right now, he's a burgeoning star who's figuring out the game, obviously not as fast as some fans would like, but he's figuring it out slowly but surely. And when he becomes his peak self, he will be a player to be reckoned with. Will that happen? Hopefully in a Cincinnati Reds uniform. Hopefully, yes. If that happens in a different uniform, hopefully not in our division. Hopefully not in the Dodgers uniform where he can be seen playing against the Reds potentially in a playoff series. That being said, I don't agree with obviously that as well. Pete Rose, crazy take. Not necessarily the greatest human being, but there's no way you can say he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame based on baseball merit. And obviously that's a black eye that really kind of taints the Hall of Fame in baseball a lot, this morality clause and whatnot. And honestly, it's kind of refreshing that this week had news that, guess what? MLB isn't the worst Hall of Fame in terms of having this morality kind of feel to it. Seems like the NFL Hall of Fame voting committees have the same type of deal where if they feel like a Bill Belichick kind of cheated and didn't necessarily deserve all the accolades that he ended up getting as the most lauded, most winningest coach, world Super Bowl winningest coach, I guess that's not good enough to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And again, if we're really going to kind of parse down all the little things in terms of like what little sins, what little situations that the Patriots found themselves in and got punished for and ended up having kind of a little bit of black marks around their, record, I get it. But there's got to be a situation where we can kind of realize, even with all that, he still won a bunch of World Series or a bunch of Super Bowls, and it probably should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, no matter who's voting in what situation. But neither here nor there. A bit refreshing that Major League Baseball isn't the only Hall of Fame committee out there or Hall of Fame voters out there that seem to buck up and put on their morality capes and try to clean up what is already kind of a messy Hall of Fame in baseball if you really look into some of the players that are in the Hall of Fame as we speak. So we'll let you do your own research on that. Nolan Ryan is clearly one of the best pitchers in baseball ever. Would he dominate nowadays with his 92 to 91 fastball? Probably not, no. But his longevity and his ability to strike out guys, and also he's from the era where these guys went the distance a lot. It wasn't like he was just a guy that had a couple good years. Like he was a guy that played 20 plus seasons into his 40s and was still throwing heat and could basically be effective at that age. And that should just first and foremost tell you that he's not overrated at all, because he can still fling it even at an elderly state and still be effective. So I don't understand that one at all. It's just more, I guess, rage bait stuff. The other guys, okay, Derek Jeter, maybe he benefited from being in those great Yankee teams with those core four guys that they had. Fine. He still had to make plays out there in the baseball field. He still hit 3,000 hits. Those are things that you can't take away. Whatever. David Ortiz, I get it. His career kind of had a slow start. Fine. Whatever. He ended up having a magical run with the 2004 Red Sox that Tito managed. So I don't know if he's overrated in terms of he might have gotten in the first or second ballot. That could be a debate, right? Like, I don't know if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. If he was. Jack Morris, kind of a controversial one. Took a long time. I think they had the Modern Era Committee or some other committee get him in because he dropped off the ballot after the 10 years of eligibility that you have. So, yeah, that one could be debated as well. But there are a lot of other baseball players in the Hall of Fame that have worse stats than Jack Morris. And then, yeah, Mark McGwire. And he saved baseball. Sammy Sosa. I can't believe Sammy Sosa wasn't on this list because he was kind of a guy that was looked at as just all home runs and didn't really deliver a lot of winning for the Cubs, even though they had some good years, maybe in '98 and 90. What was it? 97 when they or 2003 when they went up against the Marlins. So they had some good years there in Chicago. Obviously had a falling out that I think they finally mended with Sammy Sosa, which is good to see because that's the one thing I think that's good with Reds Fest and Reds alumni players that used to play there is that they're welcome back to basically be a part of the Reds family. And that's really the long and short of it. I know there's obviously not everybody's welcome back. I know I feel like I see Zach Cozart tweet all the time that he hasn't been invited back in a while, and hopefully he will. I don't understand why we can't separate whatever personal issues that we have with each other and just be able to celebrate Reds baseball. That's my thought. Like thought on it, because that's what it is. It's a party. It's a baseball party at Reds Fest. Everyone's invited. It's great for kids. It's great for the old timers and the young people and everyone in between. You should be able to enjoy Reds baseball one way or the other. There shouldn't be any bar of entry that anyone should be banned or not invited back. You know what I mean? I really think that especially the success that they had this year, there's no doubt that they need to bring it back again in January or there's about. I don't know exactly what you do with the Reds Caravan now, but they definitely need to bring Reds Fest back, and that weekend will reinvigorate everyone's passion for a long historical ball club that is hungry for some more winning. So shout out to Reds Fest and all that. Ricky wrote an article on his guy, Austin Hendrick, because there's been kind of some notion that, and we kind of talked about it a little bit on the show, that it's got to be kind of a make it or break it year for him. He's got to really show out. He's at Chattanooga Double-A. He'll probably start there again, I believe. But really, he could, if he really puts it together with possible Hector Rodriguez moving up, Jay Allen possibly in that mix as well at Chattanooga. If he proves out that he could be a reliable player and be able to build on the success that he had late in 2025, I mean, I think the Reds would love to have another left-handing hitting outfielder to deploy in there as a platoon, or to have him out there to see what he's got. He definitely is still on the younger end. He's only 24, and I know we've got a Reese Hines, and we got a Benson situation and a Blake Dunn, kind of ahead of them in the depth chart. But this is why you got to play the game, is to see where these guys all stack up at the end, and hopefully he will have. He saw career high averages in batting average and slugging, and his best OPS since his debut season in 2021. So he seems to be on the right path, and he seems to be on his way where he's hopefully building on those successes and building on all those things that hopefully will make him that much better as a baseball player going into AAA Louisville and continuous success there. So I don't know. Shout out to Austin Hendrick. We'll be obviously covering him extension, still a pro Austin show. And also we'll be covering all sorts of other minor leaguers. Hopefully maybe we even get to see Austin out there in Arizona, as Ricky and I are planning on being out there in Arizona to cover the preseason or the spring training games and try to hook up with some of the guys that we talked to in the past and be able to share some content with you, some interviews. I think we've got a bunch of guys that really enjoy this show and the Instagram, so we'll try to make sure that we cross paths and get with you guys on that. And we also have a big week coming up with a couple interviews, so be on the lookout for that. Ricky and I will be talking to some guys and getting that interview stuff out to you this week as we gear up to pitchers and catchers reporting on Monday, February 9th. It's about 8 days from now, which is, man, I envy them being out there in Arizona, where I believe they have 0 inches of snow. So shout out to Mike Ballantyne for always saying you can't shovel sunshine. So basically, out here in Cincinnati and many other parts of the Midwest and East, we have been shoveling snow for too long, and I'm ready for some warm weather, at least thinking about warm weather out there in Arizona, and seeing the guys out there with their first spring training workout and game coming up in less than 20 days. So we will get that content out to you guys out there in Goodyear, Arizona. So we'll be hopefully meeting up with Mike, who lives out there in Buckeye, and we'll be able to check out the guys and be able to report back to you some good news and get some interviews and pictures and whatnot of some Reds org players. So look forward to that. Winter ball update. It's been interesting. It's kind of wrapping up right at the right time, obviously. Escogido, which is where Hector Rodriguez plays, won the Dominican Winter League, and he ended up scoring the winning run and the only run, 1-0 win in Game 5 of their finals. So shout out to Hector. With Escogido winning the Winter Dominican League, they get to play in the Serie del Caribe and I'll be talking about that in a little bit because I was watching that game today. Unfortunately, I think because Hector is a valued player on this Reds org, and he is on the 40-man roster as we speak, he won't be participating in the Serie del Caribe for Escogido, but he'll be reporting early for Arizona spring training camp, which would be awesome. Hopefully we get to see him out there and be able to perform and play well this spring. But his team will go on without him. I think they're playing right now, I believe, against Billy Hamilton's Charros, and his team won the Mexican Pacific League against Ichiro Kano's Tomateros de Culiacan. Tomateros played earlier today, as I alluded to, against the Puerto Rican team, Cangrejeros, which are crabs, I believe, in English. So what ended up happening is that Ichiro Kano's team was up most of the game. They went up 4-0. The Puerto Rican team, Cangrejeros, Edwin Arroyo's team, which he's not playing for as well because he's reporting stateside as well for them. He only played 16 games with them anyway. A really brief stint there in like December and January. Not necessarily a long stint with him there, but they are the best team out there in Puerto Rico. So what ended up happening, the Puerto Rican team chipped away 4-2, 4-3, and then they ended up getting the bottom of the ninth. They got a couple runners on, and what ended up happening was the big hit down the left field line, down the line, scored 2 runs. They ended up winning the game 5-4 against Ichiro Kano's team. Unfortunately, he didn't play. I was hoping to catch him in some action for his Tomateros in this Serie del Caribe. Hopefully he'll play tomorrow. I'd like to see him get some at-bats, especially before he ends up going, hopefully, stateside to report to camp for the Reds, or at least getting his work in before spring training officially gets going. We will keep you updated on that. If Ichiro Kano does get some at-bats and get some looks out there, hopefully he gets maybe even a start out there at second base or third base where he's been playing a lot. Also an update, the Caminantes de Barranquilla, the team that David Lordoy plays for, is in the Serie de las Americas, which is starting on February 5th, so coming up this week. So that will start, and that's like the South American tournament where, the David Lodor is Colombian, and they were the champions of the Colombian League. They'll play against the Venezuelan teams as well. Venezuela pulled out of the Serie del Caribe, so they're playing in their Serie de las Americas, which will start again on February 5th, this Thursday. Also, Drew Davies, shout out Drew Davies of Adelaide Giants of the Australian Baseball League, the ABL. He got Rookie of the Year honors for his campaign for the Adelaide Giants. So shout out to him. Great stuff for him going into, hopefully it'll be a big season for him as well, because I believe he's playing for Daytona. He'll probably start there again in Daytona after playing the ACL for a bit. We will keep eyes on Drew Davies, Aussie baseball player. Not a lot of those in Major League Baseball, but seemed to be a good one, and he'll hopefully have a great spring training going into his full season with the Daytona Tortugas. And basically we have covered everything, man. It's kind of tough talking to yourself. I told Ricky that I'm not terribly comfortable just talking for myself on this podcast, because it feels like I'm just screaming into the void, and I'm sure my wife is thinking I'm some sort of weird, just kind of sitting up here just talking to you all. But I felt like we needed to get this podcast out there. Obviously, everyone else out there is jumping for joy that we signed EUGENIO Suarez, and we're able to get a big bat in the lineup to protect some of these younger players that don't necessarily have the pedigree, the resume that EUGENIO Suarez has. So it is good to see that overall. Really appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you, William Wright, in the chat and whatnot. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We are definitely trying to grow this channel. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's where you're going to find a lot of our videos, a lot of our YouTube shorts. We're going to find interviews and whatnot. So we really like that. We're also growing on our Instagram. So shout out to Ricky for running the Instagram page and whatnot. Any ball players that are there on the Instagram, find us. Shout us out. We'll get you on the show if you want to talk about whatever you got going on coming up into what hopefully will be a great 2026. It already has started off really well with Reds Fest, obviously in mid-January. And then, like I had put out there on X, today is the first day of real baseball for me, with the Serie del Caribe starting on February 1st. And now combine that with EUGENIO Suarez coming home. It can't get any better than that. Reds fans, make sure that you guys, comment, like, subscribe, and all our stuff. Also on All Gloves Off, like, comment, subscribe on there too. We really appreciate you all for basically helping us out, doing your thing. We are trying to grow this, and we're going into our second full season of baseball, and we're gonna try to get you what we can out of here. Spring training is just a couple days or a week away. First spring training game is about 20 days away. And before you know it, we'll be in the World Baseball Classic mode. We'll be into opening day mode. We're going to preview a bunch of the minor league teams because we like to take that bent where we're really getting into going top to bottom with this organization, all the way down the Dominican Summer League guys, man, because there are a bunch of guys there. They're working their tail off trying to get stateside to play for Reds affiliates and make this Major League Ball club. And we're really we really admire those guys for what they do and how hard they work to play baseball. You know what I mean? Especially some guys are where they come from and their background. So really shout out those guys as well. I'll get out of your hair, let you enjoy the rest of your night, because all you got to do is just go on to X, go on to other social media, and look out all the Gino memes. He's got the one with the heart everyone's putting out there. He's got the one where he's just, one of the guys that brings a smile to your face, I guess, is what I'll end with. He's definitely a guy that, even though that things might not have gone well, where he got traded in March of 2022, he still said, good vibes only, man. And then hopefully, maybe, I'll be able to come back. Well, the prodigal son has returned, and we are back, baby. Cincinnati Reds are back. I can't wait for this season. I can't wait for everyone to, join us on this journey. We really appreciate everybody that has helped us out through the time. Shout out All Gloves Off. Shout out all the guys there. Shout out to Jordan and Doug for their stuff as well. So before anything, though, guys, really appreciate it. Have a good night, and go Reds.